I just got back from the movie theater after watching Thunderbolts. This is the 36th Marvel movie. I lost track of how many TV shows. I can't believe how gigantic this franchise is, and it seems like maybe, just maybe, it's kind of losing its steam a little bit, although I think most people already know that. Thunderbolts is a good movie, and Thunderbolts was a shitty movie. When I walked out of the movie theater, I thought, that was pretty fun. I was entertained by this movie. I enjoyed myself. I live about 5 minutes from the movie theater. By the time I got home, I'm like, that didn't make sense. That didn't make sense. There's actually some pretty convenient plot contrivances. You know what? There's a lot of plot holes. This movie's stupid. Let's talk about what I like. It was fun to look at. The action was good. Marvel puts together a well-produced film. It's a well-polished, well-oiled machine. It works properly. All the pieces are where they're supposed to be, and it looks great. It is the epitome of a popcorn movie. Fun action sequences, sort of interesting characters, unlikely scenarios, lots of action. Did I mention lots of action? A little bit of humor, a little bit of misplaced humor, a little bit of humor that landed. Red Guardian is, I love the Red Guardian. Completely ridiculous. He's a lovable idiot, but he has a heart of gold, and I love the character. He's a lot of fun. The movie is elevated when he's there. He's comic relief just by being himself, and he's over the top with the character, and it works. I guess the protagonist is Yolanda, who is the Black Widow-esque character in the movie. The movie starts with her going into a secret lab where she's got to do spy shit, which brings me into one thing that I dislike about the movie, and that's the tonal inconsistency, which is a big hallmark of Marvel movies. This movie starts as an espionage-type movie, government secrets. There's an impeachment hearing in Congress where the director of the CIA is in some legal hot water for some shenanigans that she was up to. What happens to that storyline? Well, it basically fizzles out in the action. We never get an actual proper conclusion. All the main anti-villains of the movie, except for Red Guardian, are sent to the secret area to kill each other, but they don't know they're supposed to kill each other until they're locked in the room and they're gonna incinerate. Luckily, though, the off button is inside and there's a giant clock letting them know how much time they have, so they actually manage to get out. Whew, I was worried there for a second. Another problem with the movie is, even though I'm an avid movie watcher, I can't watch everything and I can't keep track of everything. I had a hard time remembering who some of these characters were. Ghost lady that walks through walls, she was barely a character in the movie. And there's one character that apparently some people were excited about that kind of early in the film. And then there's the Captain America wannabe who is in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I kind of feel bad for the guy. He lost his family. You'll learn later in the movie that his wife left him and took the kid. Kind of a sympathetic character, even though he comes off as a complete asshole and he's wrong about everything. And his character just seems to exist so he can be wrong about everything so that other characters can be right about things. But you know what? I actually kind of like that dynamic. There's interpersonal conflict. These characters don't get along until they're forced to work together to survive, and they sort of unwittingly become a team. A lot of people have been comparing this to DC's The Suicide Squad. I don't really see that, because in The Suicide Squad, they're brought together as a team. These people are just kind of thrown together, and they never really congeal as a team until the very end of the movie, and that's only when they're tricked into doing so. And they never actually go on a mission together. They're just trying not to get killed, and they're trying not to get arrested, and they're trying to get away from bad guys, but they're never actually on a mission of any sort. It's not really a superhero get-together so much as superheroes that happen to be together. I like how they handled the character of Bob. We're first introduced to Bob as this guy kind of wandering around. You don't know why he's there. He's trapped with these superheroes or anti-heroes. He's in the same place. Turns out he's got some good ideas about how to escape. We learn that he's got some dark past, and he actually becomes one of the antagonists in the movie until at the end of the movie he becomes a good guy because he forgets that he was the bad guy for a while, I think. When Bob turns into evil Superman, that little 2-minute sequence where they're all fighting, that was great. I wanted more of that. I would have loved to have seen more superhero-y stuff, but instead we got long drawn-out conversations, we got long drawn-out action sequences, and action sequences are not the same thing as superhero sequences. There's guns, there's shooting, there's explosions, there's trucks, there's chases, but there's not a lot of superhero-y stuff. But oh man, that fight in the former Avengers Tower with Sentry, Bob, that was a lot of fun. I wish the movie leaned into that more. And then they killed Bob, but then Bob came back. Bob became Evil Bob. Bob turned completely black except for a couple little white dots for eyes, which is actually really cool. And then he poofed people into dust. I was thinking, the snap there for a minute when I saw people turning into weird shadowy cloud things, but apparently they were just going to a temporary nightmare universe. I think people who practice psychology in New York are probably going to have a lot of new clients and are probably going to make a lot of money. It actually reminds me of Star Trek V, where Sybok has a psychic ability to see what your secret pain is, and he makes you face your pain, whether you want to or not, and you grow and gain strength from that sharing of the pain. However, in this movie, you're just kind of trapped into the pain in your own little sort of vault universe. I thought Evil Bob, turning people into smoke shadow things, I thought he was killing everybody, but apparently he was just popping everybody into a little room where they get to relive the worst part of their life over and over. Still pretty horrible, but they all got out in the end because Bob decided that he was going to be nice again, and then he forgot everything, and even though he had those horrible powers, because he doesn't remember being the bad guy, they just sort of trust him again. I'm not quite sure how that works. And it was kind of weird that the big superhero team-up thing actually happened in some sort of weird parallel reality shadow void thing. Wasn't really in the real world. Not quite sure what to make of that. It sort of seemed to take away from the fight a little bit when it didn't really seem to have the stakes because they weren't trying to protect the city anymore. They were just trying not to be killed in this personal nightmare hell thing. It was very anticlimactic. It was fun, it was exciting, but when it ended, it just sort of ended. The real villain of the movie was the CIA director lady who was behind everything from the start. She actually tried to get our main characters killed throughout the movie more than once. However, when it came time to expose her, the heroes of the story, it didn't do anything. She tricks them by going through a curtain, and voila, it's a press conference. And she says, due to my efforts, I have the new Avengers. And instead of taking the microphone and saying, no, this bitch fucking tried to kill us for the last 2 hours of the movie, they just say, okay, I guess we're the new Avengers now. And that's sort of where the movie ends. Kind of awkward. But the good news is you almost don't notice the tonal inconsistencies because the movie goes really fast, and it is fun. I wish it stayed with the serious espionage sort of tone that it had in the beginning. It could have emulated Captain America Winter Soldier a little bit more, but it kind of devolved into silliness and a big Marvel spectacle at the end. But it was a Marvel spectacle inside of this Bob guy's made-up Void Universe thing, which sort of took away from the stakes. It made it less exciting because there weren't really any consequences to it because it was all sort of imaginary. It was really nice to see Bucky Barnes again. It's a connection to older Marvel films. I like seeing him. I got a kick out of him cleaning his arm in the dishwasher. That was a nice touch. Overall, I give the movie a recommendation. It has gotten mostly positive reviews and extremely good audience reviews. So anybody that's criticizing the movie, I think, is in the minority. And I am criticizing the movie, but I think the good outweighs the bad here. I enjoyed the movie. I had fun watching it, and I guess that's really what movies are for. I can nitpick things. I wish this was different. I wish that was different. But overall, it was an enjoyable watch, and I felt like I was watching a Marvel movie instead of a self-parody like Thor: Love and Thunder. And how about that after-credit sequence, folks? The Fantastic Four. I guess they're trying to make you watch that movie. It's going to be important somehow. Let me know in the comments what you think. Did you enjoy Thunderbolts? Asterisk. How do you feel about the Avengers movies, knowing that these are the Avengers now? And by the way, kudos to the movie for leaning into these aren't the real Avengers with the credit sequences where they show the newspapers, the Avengers and all that stuff. Nope. Headlines about them not being the real Avengers and a little bit of conflict with the actual Captain America. I thought that was interesting. We'll see how that plays out in future movies, which is another Marvel thing that drives me crazy. The end of every Marvel movie is a commercial for the next Marvel movie, and this movie is no exception. Until next time, folks, thanks for stopping by Eric Wilford Watson's Reaction Lounge.